So this game I'm working on has two different phases, and one of them is obviously the combat phase that I've already made a couple videos about, and this second phase is sort of this board game-esque overworld phase, and I've been working on the level generator that's going to make these procedural overworlds, and I want to talk a little bit about what the overworld is and the technology behind it. So the idea is that you start, let's say, at this like little black token, and you have to navigate around to various points of interest. All of the primary interactions in the game happen at these points of interest. It could be a dungeon you have to fight to get a reward. It could be a boss you have to do for the objective. It could be a location you go to buy resources or recruit people to your party. And I wanted this overworld because I wanted there to be this sense of sort of adventure and decision-making where, you know, characters would die permanently if you lose them in a dungeon, and you have to go somewhere to recruit them. So I might go all the way over to this green tile because it's a church and I want to recruit a priest so that I can fight whatever boss is over at this yellow tile. So I like go all the way over here and all the way back. So by the time I get to the yellow tile, I'm like really invested in the fact that I have this priest and I really don't want him to die. And if he ends up dying, then I'm like, oh man, you know, I could have just gone straight there. What was the point of even going out and getting him? And so in pursuit of this cool sense of adventure, I have made this level generator. And the way it works is it starts by generating all the points of interest, so it places the player spawn and all the different dungeons and shops and stuff, and then it fills up most of the map with these sort of generic tiles. Then it places a bunch of random impassable tiles. I don't know if they're going to be mountains or what, but you can't go through the black tiles. And then it connects some of the points of interest with what I'm calling roads or paths or something. And it uses my existing pathfinding algorithm to just draw a path between a bunch of the various points of interest. And since the map is not completely filled in when we draw the paths, a lot of times the paths aren't necessarily the shortest route. So you would be incentivized to potentially spend whatever extra resources you need to spend to go through the green areas as opposed to staying on the path. And then the last step is that I just place a bunch of these purple balls which serve to mark random encounters. So you may want to try to avoid these purple balls. You may want to try to maybe spend the extra resources to go the long way rather than risk getting hit with a random encounter and having to fight some monster, especially if you're like, you know, trying to run to get to like a healing location because all your guys are almost dead. You might be like, all right, I'll spend all of my resources just going around the super long way so that I don't have to deal with all this crap. And I designed this all to be super configurable, so if I wanted to make a level with like way more mountains, I can just increase the amount of mountains and then run the level generator, and I'll get a much tighter and harder to navigate sort of level. Or if I wanted all of the points of interest to be really close to each other, I could set them to not be allowed to spawn very far from one another so that you don't have to necessarily travel very far between locations. I could even set it up so that there was no impassable tiles and all of the paths were the most optimal path between two locations. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of the gist of the overworld and what I'm trying to accomplish with it. I hope this was interesting. This is once again a thing that was much easier to do than I anticipated. I've done a lot of procedural generation in the past, but I think the simplicity of the overworld made this really easy, and it came out really well. I like how with the default parameters that I have set, I end up with like cool sort of clumps of the impassable tiles, so you have to go around the long way, and like some areas that are more open, some that aren't. Hopefully it'll create a really interesting experience and a sense of progression and adventure and investment in what's going on in the actual dungeon gameplay.